Not much of an introduction, I must say. I've had better. It was on an occasion such as this one once, when making a public appearance, I was introduced by Mr. Ralph Walker, Vice President of the Institute for Arts and Letters. "Frank Lloyd Wright," he began, "you are part and parcel of the wonder-making, pioneer spirit of our people." He continued on, calling me a Prometheus, bringing a stirring flame of a new architecture, a Moses leading a benighted eclectic into the promised land of an organic creativity, a prophet. Well, he went on like this for 20 minutes, saying that I was a true poet who never swerved from my chosen path, a blithe spirit designing buildings of grace, light, and gaiety, a genius, the likes of whom only came along once every several generations, etc., etc., etc. I had no idea that Mr. Walker's introduction would be so outrageously inadequate. Often wondered why it was he couldn't do better. As the honors piled up on me one by one through my life, I'd hoped that each one would add a certain luster to my psyche. Instead, the opposite seems to have happened, and a shadow has fallen with each one. They gnawed away at my customary arrogance until I feel coming on this strange disease so highly regarded, humility. If it keeps up like this, I shall lose all usefulness. It's customary on occasions such as this, when facing an audience, for me to receive some advice from my wife: "Don't pick on them." To which I might reply, "I'm afraid that before we're through, they shall be picking on me." It's my customary duty to deliver what I call a minority report. I'm referring, of course, to my third wife, Olgivana, whose advice I greatly valued. She saved me from disaster, financial and otherwise, on more than one occasion. She asked me to tell you that. We met and fell in love under the most awkward circumstances. I'd just gotten married to my second wife. Well, now, I think I'd like to clear up some misconceptions about myself. Oh, you've heard them. My roofs leak. Balderdash, all roofs leak to an extent. Flat roofs are particularly susceptible. It's the price you pay for not having a pitched roof, the only purpose of which is to support the weight of snow. Building technology has improved to the point where we no longer have to prevent the buildup of snow, but you're still building houses with this great, vast, dark, gloomy, cobweb-infested space over your heads. You call it an attic. And feeling obliged to utilize this unnecessary space, you fill it with unnecessary junk. Better an occasional leak. I don't know anything about engineering, my critics like to say. His buildings will never stand up. Well, my friends, just look around you. All of my buildings, or those at least that have not been torn down by man, and there are a few of them, are still standing. Let me tell you a little story. I was brought up in Wisconsin, in the valley of my relatives, the God Almighty Lloyd Joneses. Hard-working people of Welsh extraction. My aunts, Nell and Jane, mother sisters, had a school in the valley, the Hillside Home School, and when I was an apprentice working for Silsby in Chicago, I still didn't know what I was doing. I designed a building for them. Well, they were delighted with it. Sometime after that, a reservoir was scooped out of the hillside above the school. They decided they wanted to put a windmill up there. My uncle said one of those iron windmills that dot the countryside would do just fine. my aunts weren't hearing of it. They wanted something more charming as befitting their school, so they wrote off to me for a design. In due course, I sent them back the plans. It was a charming wooden structure. I called it the Romeo and Juliet Tower because I had a little balcony running around up top. Well, all hell broke loose in the family. My uncles called on Kramer, the local contractor, to come and back up their opposition. Sure as death in Texas, he told them, it'll come down in the first good storm. Well, my uncles put their foot down. According to, quote, Uncle James, I don't never ride my horse in these parts without I don't take pleasure in one of them iron windmills. They get the job done and they're cheap. Well, my aunts weren't going to take no for an answer. So Aunt Nell, she was the more practical of the two, she turned to Kramer and she said, how much will it cost? $950, he said. One of those iron windmills? $275. Well, that's nothing, Aunt Nell said. That's only $675 more. I told you she was more practical. Well, my aunts prevailed. The tower got built, despite the fact that two of Kramer's men quit, fearing it would come down and kill them. Sure enough, first sou'wester that hit after that, my uncles were all up at first light at their front doors, peering up through the driving rain, howling wind for confirmation. Their worst fears had been realized, but there stood Romeo and Juliet, spinning away, doing just what she was supposed to do, happy as a cow in clover. My uncles figured it was just a matter of time. Henceforth, thereafter, every time there was a storm in the night, they were up before dawn, awaiting the impending disaster. Got to the point where they no longer feared it would come down. They prayed it would come down, just so they'd be proven right. Well, I'm here to tell you, my aunts and uncles are long gone, as are all the iron windmills in that part of the countryside. Romeo and Juliet is still there to this day. Well, you've probably heard about me that I am prickly when it comes to working with my clients. Nothing could be further than the truth. I have no problems with clients. I do just what I want, and the hell with them. The client doesn't know what he wants. They want something that's exactly like every building that's ever been built, and unlike anything that anybody's ever seen before. Oh, and when I designed a house for Mr. Stanley Marcus down in Texas, he received the plans. He called me up on the telephone. I've been looking over the drawings, Mr. Wright, and I can't seem to find the bedrooms. You know, climate, you don't need bedrooms, Mr. Marcus. You can sleep outdoors. Mr. Wright, if I sleep outdoors, I'll catch my death of a cold. I'm terribly susceptible to colds. Wouldn't be if I slept outdoors more. Well, there's another thing. I can't find the closets. Perhaps you've omitted them. Closets are an abomination. Accumulate unnecessary junk, nothing more. But, Mr. Wright, I'm in the fashion business. My wife and I really do need a certain amount of good clothes. You shouldn't. Wear them once. Give them away to people who need them more than you do. But there's another thing, Mr. Wright. The windows, there doesn't seem to be any way to attach screens to them. Do you think you could change them with double-hung sash windows? Double-hung sash windows are hideously unattractive. Mr. Wright, I like to read at night, and in summer, when the windows are open, I'll have every bug in Texas landing on me. You should go to bed when the sun goes down, Mr. Marcus, like nature intended.
Well, I suppose you want to hear something about architecture. Well, okay, first of all, let's talk about just what architecture is. How many of you know what architecture means, really? I ask that of students. They look at me as if I was talking to them in Greek. Well, most architects don't know. You imagine going around all your life with a label hung on you, you don't know what it means? Well, let's look at the word architecture. Arch, like arch, the archbishop, way up there at the top, above everything, the master.
and detect, technician, technology, know-how. So the architect is the master of know-how, and there you have it. If I never did anything else for you, I came down and cleared that one up. What does it take to build a superior building? A superior human being. Education. Unfortunately, education has become less about enlightenment, more about conditioning. We teach people, we don't educate them. There's a difference, you know. You teach people to think like you do. You educate them to think for themselves. I spent a great deal of time in Europe. Spoke to the Italians. They're the most artistically advanced people in all of Europe today. They said to me, Mr. Wright, democracy in America is doomed to fail because you have no way to prevent the rise of mediocrity to high places. Your system was designed to, it's all right. Your system was designed to be ruled by the greatest and the best. How are you going to achieve greatness if the mediocre are making all the decisions? We don't have art anymore in this country. It's all about money, all about profit, the almighty dollar. I was designing a funeral home. The mortician kept referring to the corpses as the merchandise. H.L. Mencken once said, Americans seem to have a lust for ugliness. He's right, you know, look around you, the wires, the poles dotting the countryside. Nothing, you see, shows any respect for beauty or order, harmony, aesthetics. Mr. Louis Kahn once said to me, he said, Frank, he said, architecture is 5% creativity and 95% business. I said, well, all right. Louis, I can understand the 95% business, but I've seen your work. Where's the creativity? I was in Pittsburgh not long ago. They asked me how it can be approved. I said, level it. Start again.